Welcome in, everyone, to Girl, How'd You Get That Gig? For my partner, Celeste Gehring, I'm Amy G, and we are so excited to welcome in someone who has a super cool job in sports, but more importantly, someone I've gotten to know over the years and I get to call my friend. Maria Guardado has covered the San Francisco Giants for MLB.com since 2019. She previously covered the New York Mets for the Newark Star-Ledger and the Los Angeles Angels for MLB.com. Welcome in, Maria. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I spent this morning binging like the first 3 episodes, so I'm already feeling really inspired, and I'm really excited that you guys are doing this project. So I think it's really going to help a lot of people. So I'm excited to be here.
We wanted to start with your actual job that you have right now, covering the San Francisco Giants for MLB.com. What are your daily duties in that gig?
Yeah, so essentially I'm kind of in charge of, our Giants coverage at MLB.com. So essentially what that means is, I'm basically at most games, doing game coverage, doing pregame news, doing anything, obviously covering, anything from injuries to trades to game recaps. So that's kind of, what I do generally. And I guess what that looks like on a daily basis is, if it's a night game, I'll probably show up to the ballpark around 3 o'clock or so. The clubhouse tends to open, something like 4 hours before first pitch. So obviously you're in there taking advantage of kind of that hour of pregame access to check in with guys. If there's, someone new, you obviously want to, find out what's going on with the roster moves, things like that. Just really taking that advantage of that time to figure out what's going on with the team. And then, you obviously meet with the manager before games, get more information from him about where things stand. And then there's obviously the game itself, which is kind of the bulk of your day, obviously watching the game, writing at the same time. And then, after that, going back to the clubhouse, collecting things, and then coming back up and putting together your story. So I guess that's kind of, what my day tends to look like. Obviously kind of a grind during the season just because there are so many games. And, we do get a little bit of a break in the off season, but it can still be busy, obviously, with, free agency and winter meetings and things like that. So it kind of is kind of a year round gig. And, let's not forget spring trading. So It's busy. It can be all consuming, but obviously it's a lot of fun. It's hard to complain when you're, covering baseball most days. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and speaking of it being a really busy grind for you, what's your social life like? Do you have one? Tell us about that.
Getting right into it, Celeste.
Yeah, I want to know.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, I feel like my family doesn't know like which city I'm in half the time. So I think like my dad had to I think he keeps he has one of those pocket schedules from that the Giants give out, and he's like, oh, you're in those. Are you so and so here? So they kind of generally know my whereabouts just by looking at the Giants schedule. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, there are obviously, off days in the calendar, but, a lot of times those are kind of turned into errand days because you don't really have time to do things like laundry, when you're kind of caught up in the middle of the season. So it is tough. I do try to see my family when I can and hang out with friends and stuff, but it's hard. It's hard to find that balance when this job is so demanding. And I think, that's something that, it's tricky, but I think you kind of have to find time to step away and unplug because, it can really just kind of take over your life and become, you end up thinking about the Giants 24/7, which is probably not the healthiest thing. So
we're not going to do that. I mean, I love the Giants, but I don't want to do that.
Exactly. So I think you do have to, take some time for yourself and, unplug, recharge and things like that, because, it's really easy to get burnt out, quite frankly, in this type of job.
How hard is that, Maria, when you are starting to realize that you need some me time throughout this season? It is a grind. At times it's 24/7 when they're making trades. She just got past the trade deadline. But I find, for how long I've covered baseball, and I do it in a different way than you do, where I do have more freedom, especially now. But for years, it was every game. I missed a lot. I missed a lot with my friends. And I kind of just said, keep asking me. Just keep asking me, because I want to feel included, even though I can't go. I still want to feel like I'm part of it, because I think some people fell out of my life because every time they asked me to do something, I couldn't. And it affected a lot of family holidays. I was never at 4th of July or Mother's Day. I was like, Mom, do you want to come to the game? Because that's where I'm going to be. And then you could make that like a good gift. You figure out ways. But how how difficult has it been since you're years into it, but not a lot of years into it, to find that balance of self-care and doing the job well and not freaking out that somebody's going to beat you at something?
Yeah, I think it is challenging. I mean, you want to feel like you're not going to miss anything big, but you never know when things are going to happen. You might, not be on a road trip and then, some big prospect gets called up and you're like, oh man, you start to get FOMO. But I think you have to realize that, I mean, like the things that are most important in your life are your friends, are your family, is your support system. So I think that you really do have to kind of prioritize those things, and be there when you can. I mean, I think me and my sister have
Mhm.
been like trying to plan a trip to Big Sur for like 6 months and it just like hasn't
Mm.
worked out. But I think we're finally gonna go like next Thursday. So I think that will
Yay.
hopefully work out. But yeah, I mean, I think that, as you mentioned, you do have to sacrifice a lot. I have missed a lot of birthday parties, a lot of weddings and things like that. But you have to try to find your spots and, try to work it out when you can. Like, um, you know, um, because it is important to be there, and have some separation between, your work and your personal life.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, it's challenging. I think that, this type of job is really demanding, but, I think that if you are going to kind of have that stamina, I think you do have to take those moments to recharge and just kind of, look out for yourself, as you mentioned, like self-care, like, whether it
Mhm.
be thing from like, taking a bath on your off day or something, or like
Right.
my personal form of recharging is just kind of like sitting at home and watching Gilmore Girls. So that's kind of what I do.
That's a great.
Exciting, but it's what I do. So
I
yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I love that too. Maria, what is your background in sports? Did you play?
Mhm.
I ran track and cross country in high school, but I wasn't very good. So that's basically all I did.
How did your love of baseball develop?
Yeah, so I guess I really have to credit my brothers. They did play little league when they were younger. One of my oldest brother took me to my first A's game when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and it was at the first time I'd ever been to any sort of live sporting event. So I remember we took Bart to the game, like he was kind of explaining to me like what RBI is, what ERA is, and kind of just teaching me like the rules of baseball. And like, once I got to the Coliseum, I was like super impressed with everything. Like I love the field, I love the vibe, I loved like all the fans in the bleachers with the drums. Like I just was like really hooked. So it really just left a really pretty like a deep impression on me. So
Mm.
after that day, I was left wanting more. So I really kind of started to just watch the games. I started to listen to the radio broadcast. I started riding my scooter to Rite Aid to pick up the papers so I can read about the A's.
Mm.
So that's kind of how I started to really fall in love with baseball. The A's were my favorite team growing up, so they're the ones I followed the most. So, and I had always really loved writing. So, at a certain point, it just kind of occurred to me like, oh, like maybe I could like write about baseball and that would be kind of be my ideal job. So that's kind of when I started, going down that path of pursuing sports journalism as a career.
Yeah, let's expand on that for sure, because
Yeah.
anybody listening is always like, why we even started the podcast is how'd you get your job? So, what age did you start to think, oh, I could combine these two loves of writing, baseball, and then how did you go about it?
Yeah, I guess I started thinking about it when I was probably in high school. The one thing that I guess was really a game changer for me was, my junior. I guess the when I was going to be a senior in high school, I actually did this journalism program at Princeton. It's called the Princeton Summer Journalism Program, and it's basically a program for kind of low income high school students who are interested in pursuing journalism, and it's kind of all expenses paid. It was the first time I'd ever, flown out to the East Coast to be on Princeton campus and things like that. And it was just a really amazing program because it was kind of run by these professional journalists, who were, basically like taught me like kind of the basics of journalism, and gave us an opportunity to kind of put out like an actual newspaper. We had a trip to New York where we visited
Wow.
offices like New York Times, like Time Magazine. We had all these different assignments where we got to like, cover a minor league baseball game and like, do things around the town. And like, it was like a week long immersive experience. And it really
Yeah.
changed my life, not only because it kind of was my gateway into journalism, but also because the program kind of provided a lot of, like support through the college admissions program. Like once we went home and things like that, they kind of kept in touch with us, like gave us mentors to kind of like guide us through that process as well. And, they were the ones who kind of encouraged me to really, aim high when it came to applying to colleges and things like that. So they were a huge part in like helping me kind of step out of my comfort zone and like kind of aim high when it came to that sort of thing. So that's kind of how I ended up at Yale at the end of the day, which also ended up being pretty big toward, my eventual path into sports journalism.
Well, that's where we're going, right, Celeste?
Exactly. Just talk about your path at Yale and what that was like.
Our
Yeah.
last guest went to Yale too, Maria. So we were trying to decide if like we should just only have people from Yale because we didn't know anyone from Yale
What's funny,
until
I actually covered Xena on the women's basketball team there. I think we
oh my
think we both
gosh.
graduated from Yale in the 2014, although she was in a different residential college. But yeah, so when I got to Yale, I did end up writing for the college paper, which is the Yale Daily News, and it's really like obviously it's run by students, but I mean it has like a really professional setting in the sense that like they're student journalists who are putting out a paper basically like 5 days a week and covering the whole university really from top to bottom. So it was really cool to kind of be able to step in on campus and have kind of like that experience of working at a paper even while I was going to college, obviously. So yeah, when I got there, I mostly did I believe women's soccer, women's basketball, softball, things like that. So it was kind of my first experience being like almost like a beat writer of certain teams. So that was really cool. It was really, I think, valuable to be able to get some of those bylines and just have the experience of like working on a deadline, working with editors and things like that. So definitely a really formative experience for me there.
So I have a couple of different ways I want to go here, but you majored in history, right? So I want to figure out that path because I think it's really important that people realize you can study different things and end up still where you wanted to go and broaden yourself because Xena majored in something else too. It wasn't communications. So I think a lot of people are thinking journalism or communications were bust, right? So you didn't. So I want to find out about that. And then I want to ask you about getting your bylines because I think that's a big, big tip for people. So let's start with why history.
Yeah, so I think history has always probably been one of my favorite subjects. So I was just really interested in, I kind of view history as kind of like I like understanding like why things are how they are now, like the path to getting there. And I feel like history teaches you like, how things develop over time. Like
How we don't learn anything because we just keep repeating it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of lessons to be learned, I think, by studying history. And I think one thing that's also worth noting is that Yale's a liberal arts school, so they actually don't even have like a journalism major, communications major. So they really like encourage you to like pursue like liberal arts and things like that and humanities. So I think it's really valuable to yeah, as you mentioned, study things that aren't necessarily journalism because I think that you can learn a lot of skills that will help you once you kind of decide to pursue that path. Like in history, for example, you learn things about research and like how to use like primary sources, I think, and things like that. And I think that those can be really, really valuable when you're working on like features or things like that. So for me, I just I just always really loved history. I think I especially loved the history in Latin America. So that was kind of my personal focus. I actually ended up writing my senior thesis on like Fernando Valenzuela and Fernando Maine in LA in the 80s. So
Cool.
I found one of my biggest mentors was like a really big baseball fan, and so we kind of connected over that. And he was like my advisor for that whole project. That was really cool. I actually got to like go to like Dodger Stadium and like do research, a little bit of research there, like took a tour and things like that. So yeah, even when I was like a senior in college and trying to write my thesis, I still had to find a baseball angle to like keep it interesting for myself. So that's what
it's in your blood. Yeah. That's so, I didn't know that you love Fernando. My husband, Paul, it's his favorite player growing up. And actually they're working on a book.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
I
so
know.
cool.
And I don't know if I can reach it. I don't know where he is. Nobody knows this, Maria. You see my shot, right?
Yeah.
Nobody knows this. This is like an exclusive. Hang on.
Yes. Breaking some news here. I love it. Oh, that's so cool.
but I won't let him be in my shot because then Giants fans are going
Right.
to be mad at me. But this is
That's for
Paul's, you
sure.
guys. Everybody, this is Paul's. He's never in my shot. Little Fernando has to leave if I do use that shelf as my background. But yeah, and Fernando Valenzuela is literally one of the nicest human beings on the planet.
Yeah, it was really cool. Like now that like obviously I get to go to Dodger Stadium a bunch because there are so many series against the Giants, and it's really like surreal still to see him like
It
in
is.
the box. And like I haven't like actually talked to him, but he'll kind of like nod at me sometimes, and like I'm like, oh hey, like yeah. So yeah, he
Of
may be a
course he
Giant, but
did.
I just feel or he may be a Dodger, I should say, but I just feel like he had such a big impact, like
Oh, huge,
culturally, like so
huge.
yeah, he's just a really interesting figure. So yeah.
Hmm. That's a great, oh gosh, I love that. So, okay. And you mentioned mentors, Celeste, you go with mentors after this. I just want to finish out my second question on your bylines, the importance of getting something in print. You know, here you're studying history, but you got practical experience by joining the school newspaper. And I think that's a huge tip for anybody in school or, you know, looking to go into sports. Like you want to get some practical experience. You want to get clips and which are articles that you can use going forward for interviews. So just tell us a little bit about the importance of those in your career path that you had this base from college.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's huge for any prospective journalist. You want to be able to show, people that you can put together a story, that you do have experience doing that. And there's no better way to do that than to give them your clips and be like, here's my body of work, here's what I could do. Here's my writing style. So I think it really is huge to just have that in your back pocket and to be able to send it off to people when you are applying to jobs. Another cool thing I think that happened to me when I was in college is that I actually got an internship at Sports Illustrated through the Association for Women in Sports Media. So, that internship was in New York, and for the most part, I was kind of just fact checking, like some of the longer form
Mm-hmm.
articles in the magazine. But I actually did get like two super 50-word bylines in the
Yeah,
magazine. It was like the coolest thing
Nice.
ever for me, and yeah, and it was nice to be able to once I graduated be like, here's my byline in Sports Illustrated, so that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's huge.
so
You and Paul have a lot in common. I met him at Sports Illustrated and he was fact checking.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of like the entry level job at SI.
Mhm.
So it is huge to just have those, because that's kind of like what you're going to use to get people's attention and to show that
Mhm.
you are serious about this, you have done it, and you want to keep doing it. So
And
definitely,
establish the relationship,
yeah, exactly.
right? Like people that you can go back to when you're ready to get into the workforce. Did you want to ask about mentors, Celeste?
Sure. Who were some of your biggest mentors that helped you?
Yeah, there have definitely been quite a few. I think anyone who was gonna wants to carve out kind of a long career in this industry, can't do it without the help of people who are kind of looking out for them early on. So I think when I was in New York, which is kind of where I ended up breaking in to kind of the baseball writing world. Some people who were really instrumental to helping me early on were guys like, Mark Harrig, who I believe is now at The Athletic, Anthony DiComo, who's now my colleague at MLB.com, James Wagner of the New York Times, Marley Rivera. She's also someone who I think was really important to me personally because, I remember watching her, covering the home run derby and, interviewing Yoenis Cespedes in Spanish and translating in English. And it was just like such a big moment for me, is just being able to know that there was room for Latinas in this industry, not only and doing it at the highest level on TV. So I think that was really huge for me personally to be able to kind of see that and know that there, like I said, there is space for people like me to do this job. So I think that those are some people who have definitely helped me out and really helped me develop along over the years as well.
What do you
Yeah,
feel? Well, I was just going to go into the Latina part really quickly, if we could. Just that I think that's so important to bring up. You're bilingual. You are a Latina from start of your career to where you are today. What does the field look like to you? Are you seeing more Latinas, Latinos in the workplace where you're at? Um, and what are the challenges you faced as a female and as a female Latina? What are some successes? I see it as such a plus that you're bilingual, especially in baseball, because you can get things other people can't get because we don't understand, right? But I think it also comes with its adversities.
Yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, I think almost like somewhere like 30% of major league players are Latinos. So obviously it's huge to be able to communicate with them in their native language and not necessarily have to go through an interpreter. I think it really is huge to just kind of be able to connect with them on that level. I think, just having kind of a similar background, I feel like you kind of just know that where you guys are coming from. I think it is easier to get them to trust you a little bit just because they know that, nothing's going to get lost in translation. And it is nice to just be able to kind of communicate with them, even if it isn't like a formal interview, just kind of like, make small talk with them, kind of, get to know them and understand that they had a really tough journey just to get here. I mean, a lot of these guys are
Totally.
who signed with teams as teenagers, they had to leave home,
Left home.
leave states, like learn a new language, like try to assimilate to the culture. At the same time, they're trying to like obviously rise through the minors. It's really tough for them. So I think just understanding, what they had to overcome just to get here helps a ton too. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think has really been huge for me personally. I think when I first started out at my first real job in sports journalism was at the Star Ledger in New Jersey. So I was working a lot, doing a lot of Mets and Yankees coverage at the beginning. And, when the Mets traded for Yoenis Cespedes, I believe it was in 2015, I was one of the only Spanish speaking reporters who was writing for an English outlet. And so I managed to get things out of Cespedes that no one else did. And I think that that's something that really that people took note of and honestly helped me end up getting a job with MLB.com after that. So people take notice. I think that the nice thing is that I think that there is kind of a growing number of both Spanish speaking reporters and more women kind of making their way into the industry. I think it probably still isn't, where it could be, but it is nice to see a lot more people from that background kind of, working their way into the industry. Cause I think it's huge. I think it's good for everyone, right? I think I think it allows us to, as reporters, to kind of get better stories and really just enhances our coverage and allows us to get to know a lot of these players who have really interesting stories to tell. And, sometimes some people can't access them because of that language barrier. So I think it's up to us to kind of help break that down and kind of, shed some light on these guys because a lot of them are really interesting people and,
great
have really
stories. I know. Such great stories.
Well, and Amy and I talk a lot about mentorship and just what would you tell the Latin community or what do you talk to them about if they want to be a sports writer, opening the doors for them and showing representation? What do you talk to them about and what advice do you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you just have to know that, that if you can speak the language, it's going to be huge. I mean, it's something that I use every day, in clubhouses. Like it's something that is going to differentiate you. And obviously this is a really competitive industry. A lot of people, and it is hard to get your foot in the door, but I think if you bring that, it's going to be huge. It's going to really help you. Even I would probably tell them to just even start like learning Japanese if you can, because who's the biggest player on the planet, man?
Right, O'Shea. Yeah. Otani, yeah.
That could be huge too. But yeah, it never hurts to embrace kind of your own background, because I think it's something that can really help you in the professional setting, obviously. And I guess the other thing I was to say is that it really is important to kind of find a way to access a lot of these professional networks, because like for me, like I'm someone who like I'm a child of Mexican immigrants. Like, my parents didn't necessarily like have a lot of like professional connections like when I was growing up. But I think that, by doing things like this Princeton journalism program, like, by getting an internship through the Association for Women in Sports Media, I was kind of able to find a way to access a lot of these networks and build connections with people who are already in the industry. And that's instrumental, because I think that a lot of the times they're the ones who are going to be able to give you a heads up when, there are going to be openings that make sense for you. So yeah, I mean, it is huge to find a way to access those networks, whether it be something like just sending an email to a writer that you really admire, just, get kind of, making it clear that you do want to get into this space, because a lot of times a lot of these writers will be really willing to help you out and, take some time to like chat with you, offer some advice. So yeah, I think that those two pieces are what I would say, I guess.
Those resources that Maria is talking about, Celeste, are huge. I mean, I just know Paul as a Latino breaking into the sports industry because he worked for he was the sports director at the school newspaper at UNLV. It opened up a lot of programs and scholarships to him through the Latin community. There was a Chicano scholarship that he received. He was in like 3 or 4 different organizations that mentored minorities. And so for anybody listening, like start asking, like, the Princeton program that Maria is talking about, start asking what is around your school, your counselors, who they know these programs, because they're out there, they have money to help, and they focus on minorities, which is huge. And because when he was telling me like these different scholarships he had gotten, I didn't know about any of those. So they're really, really helpful. One thing I remember about you, Maria, the first time I met you, what was your first spring training, probably 2019 in Arizona, and you had baked a cake for the press box. And the rumor was the new girl can bake. This girl, she can cook. And I thought it was ingenious so there's a culture, I think, of sports writers, and they like to eat. Sports writers love to eat. And so she kind of, to me, was way ahead of the game. I wasn't surprised she went to Yale when I heard that. I don't think there was any true strategy in what you were doing, but I thought it was kind of ingenious to bring yourself into the fold of a group of people. And you talk about how competitive sports is to get into. Well, when you're covering a team, you're in a really competitive situation with your colleagues, and you can be friendly, but I don't know when you get to a point where you really trust people. It takes a while because you're going up against each other. So can you just share a little bit about your method of working with your colleagues, networking, how you deal with the competition, what the culture of being a sports writer and amongst other sports writers is like?
Yeah. I think there was something strategic about the cake, though. Just to start off, like I
Probably,
realized
girl.
early on that the best way to get people to like you is to give them free food. So,
Yeah.
but no,
It kind
but
of works across the board. It's not just sports, but sports writers really like food.
yeah, that was me trying to make friends. But anyway, yeah, the press box dynamic is really interesting because like you end up spending like so much time with your fellow beat writers. Like I spend way more time with like the beat writers than I do like my family probably, which is kind of
Mm-hmm.
sad in some ways. But yeah, so you obviously are like friendly with most of them, but at the same time, as you mentioned, I mean, they're your competitors, right? You want to beat them,
Mm-hmm.
you want to write the best stories, you want to be breaking news. So it is kind of difficult because I mean, we all have the same job, we all have the same access most of the time. So you do kind of have to, find ways to differentiate your stories and your coverage. And I guess a lot of it comes with just, maybe thinking ahead, trying to come up with fresh angles, maybe trying to do the extra interview that no one else is going to do, so you can maybe get like a cool anecdote that no one else has. So yeah, I mean, you really kind of have to just be on top of your game all the time, just try to think ahead, stay ahead of the curve. And it can be challenging because like I said, I mean, it's a 162 game season. Like it's kind of hard enough just to get through that grind and to, constantly be trying to think ahead, trying to think of new story ideas. It can be kind of exhausting. So it is a challenge. I actually think it's probably the hardest part of doing the job, is just trying to find ways to keep yourself engaged, and also like, come up with fresh things about the team. Sometimes it's kind of the same story all over and over again. So it is challenging to stay fresh, but I think that's what really, makes the top beat writers the top beat writers. They are the ones who can figure out ways to do something new. So yeah, I mean, it's something that I think that, we're always, pushing ourselves to do, and, just trying to stay creative, because there are a lot of opportunities to do that in baseball, just because there are so many games. You do probably have more access than, say, football and things like that. So you just have to kind of take advantage of that and remember that, you're there to kind of tell stories, and hopefully you're doing things that are a little bit different than your competitors.
Yeah.
Maria, were you always this confident when you stepped in? I'm sure your confidence level might have been a little bit different when you started to now. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely not. I mean, I feel like a lot of that's, one thing that, I still even struggle with sometimes is like imposter syndrome. You still have to, fake it till you make it sometimes. You still kind of have to push through anxiety and like, doubting yourself. Because yeah, I mean, I think that that's the one thing with I think that's why it's so important to have kind of representation in the press box, is just because when you sometimes don't see as many women, as many like Latinas around you, you do feel a little bit more isolated, and maybe you don't feel like you do kind of doubt yourself sometimes. So yeah, I think it's an ongoing process for me even now. I think it's something that, I'm like really hard on myself. I have like really high expectations for myself. And sometimes when I feel like I'm not meeting them, I could just kind of get really, I'm not in the best space mentally, but I think that just learning to kind of, be confident and just know that, I'm experienced at this point. I've been doing it for a while. Like just remembering that and trusting myself is really important, because yeah, there are some times where I'm not sure about my, I'm kind of doubting myself, but yeah, I mean, I think that it is important sometimes to just fake it till you make it.
100%. Listen, it doesn't change, my dear. And I'm a lot older than you, but I love that you shared that, because that's just so raw and so true. And I think it's actually really refreshing for anybody listening to this, that they're on the outside looking in thinking you've got it all put together. And, there's days that we don't. But I know when I was in the broadcast, it didn't matter what my day was like. I really had to fake it because I had to be happy on camera, even if something tragic had happened in my life. Nobody knew, and you can't talk about it. So you do have to grind through a lot of stuff. I know we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask you about building relationships with players and what your key is to that, because it's absolutely, the most important thing you have as a beat writer is the way the team thinks about you, the way they accept you, if they talk to you, and how you advise women on building those relationships with players, because we're a little bit, I think we're put in unfair situations at times when we do go up and talk to a player. We'll have somebody else say, "Oh, look at her. She's flirting with him to get the interview." Or, there's all these extra things going on as a female in male sports that men do not have to deal with. And that's the judgment, the assumptions. And so what is your approach to staying reputable, to, you're well liked, people respect you, and how have you achieved that?
Yeah, I mean, it is challenging. As you mentioned, I feel like that's something I kind of struggled with probably when I was a little bit younger, just kind of like overthinking like things and like just, making sure that like people saw that I was there to do my job, right? So, putting a lot of thought into just how I presented myself, what I wore every day, like, and just, yeah, making it clear that I was there to do a job, like, and yeah, so it can be a little tricky. Like sometimes I'm still like not even completely sure sometimes like how to ask a player for his phone number, because like I don't want it to go across the wrong way. I feel like that's such a pitfall that, our male competitors like don't have to think about, right? Like,
so true.
So I think I think most players, when they see you kind of every day in the clubhouse, like doing your job, like being thoughtful about like, your questions, like, finding common ground with these guys and remembering that they're human. Like, I think that that's something that they respond well to. Like, I think that, they are obviously, guys who are making a ton of money playing this game, but at the same time, they're not robots. Like, they're humans. So at the end of the day, I think if you kind of just approach, I think if you're fair and you're direct and you kind of just approach things with empathy, I think that that's a way that you're going to gain kind of a lot of trust and respect in the clubhouse. So I guess that's what I try to do. But yeah, I mean, I think it is tricky when you're a woman, and like, I think it's like less of a big deal for me now, because I feel like in the Bay Area especially, there are a ton of women in this market. Like, there's obviously Amy, but there's also Susan Slusser, there's Janie McCauley of the AT, Sonia Chen, who's one of my colleagues at MLB.com, Joan Ryan. So I just like really lucky that, obviously you guys have helped kind of make it more normal for women to be in the club.
We'll take them down, Maria. They mess with you, we're taking them down. There's enough of us now. Like, we have a clique.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in the Bay Area, it's almost 50-50 sometimes. So
it does feel a lot more equal than when I first started. Yeah, it was like me and Joan. I'm like, oh, hey, I'm going to stand by you. And she's like 5 feet tall and there's me in there. I'm like, so I think I'm on my own, Joan.
Yeah, so I just feel like I've really benefited from just a lot of the trailblazers who have kind of obviously made it more normal and accepted for women to be in the clubhouse. So yeah, I mean, I just like, like I said, try to be professional every day. And yeah, I mean, like I said, try to connect with these guys on a professional level. I think that goes a long way.
I have a line on the phone number if you want to borrow it. I mean, it's nothing like earth shattering, but I always say, would you be comfortable giving me your phone number so I can reach out to you, for whatever it was I needed for the story or the feature? Would you be comfortable with me having your phone number? And they're like, yeah, they never flinch about it, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
That phone number question you're so right. Because it's like, I'm not asking you for a date. I'm asking you for information.
Yeah.
I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right. Last question, Maria. What other advice would you give to end this segment up for journalists that are inspired by you and want to do what you're doing? What advice do you have for them?
I guess I would say read widely. I think I think it's really important to kind of understand the landscape of coverage that you're putting yourself into, and kind of study some of the coverage that's already out there, and know like what you like. I kind of identify like what areas you think are lacking, and maybe where you can kind of step in and help fill that void, and also just find people whose work you really admire and understand like why you admire it, like because that will sometimes give you a little bit of a guidepost toward developing the type of style that you want and things like that. So I think that that's pretty important, and also I guess networking in general I think is really important. We kind of touched on it earlier, but just knowing people in the industry, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be able to give you the heads up when there are openings, and they can be kind of the ones who are going to obviously help put your resume at the top of the pile, and connect you with like managers, editors, people who are in position to hire. So yeah, those are really important, I think. So it's something that was really instrumental in my career personally. So I think that those are the two pieces of advice that I would offer.
Thank you for paying it forward today.
Yes, thank you.
Will you share your social channels so people can follow you?
Yeah, definitely. I'm on Twitter at @mi_Guardado, which is GUARDADO. So that's probably the best platform to follow me. Although I guess it's not called Twitter anymore, right?
Z?
Yeah.
That looks like an X?
Yes, that that platform.
It's hard for us to keep up, Maria. Maria, you're the best. Thank you so much. I love talking to you every week, and I'm so glad that you could do this. I think you are so inspirational and such a great role model. So really appreciate your time.
All right, thanks so much.
See you, girl.
Maria.
Yeah. You've been listening to Girl, How'd You Get That Gig with hosts Amy G and Celeste Gehring. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on YouTube and follow us on Instagram. The handle is @GirlGigPodcast. Followers and subscribers are automatically entered to win our giveaway prizes, announced every other Wednesday on our Instagram page. Until our next episode, go get that gig.